Some of the most defining aspects of the last decade has been the rise in religious dogmatism and the rise in the superhero films. Why do we enjoy superhero films? Maybe because of the superhero's indomitable will to win against the villain, against all odds. Or maybe because we find it very exciting and thrilling to watch all the superpowers come into action on the big screen. Maybe. When I was a child, I used to wonder, what must it be like to have different kinds of superpowers, maybe all superpowers? What must it be like to be able to control the universe, to be all powerful, to be able to do anything and everything? One of those, what we can say, fantasies we get when we are exposed to different kinds of science fiction films and shows at an early age. But wait, is it even possible? I mean, not technologically or physically, but logically, is it even possible to be able to do anything and everything and to be all-powerful being in the universe? Omnipotence is the word which is used to describe the quality of being having unlimited powers and to be able to do anything and everything. The Latin prefix omni means all and potens means powerful. All-powerful being in the universe. Let's see what the definitions say. The Cambridge Dictionary states omnipotence as unlimited power and the ability to do anything. Oxford Learner's Dictionary defines it as total power and ability to do anything, while the Lexico.com defines it as the quality of having unlimited or very great power. Now that could have been enough prerequisites to march forward in this video, but no, we have to understand the types of omnipotence. Broadly speaking, omnipotence is divided into two categories: accidental omnipotence and essential omnipotence. Accidental omnipotence is when the being acquires omnipotence for a certain period of time, but he is essentially a non-omnipotent being. While on the other hand, an essential omnipotent being is the one who is all-powerful at all times. In this video, we are specifically concerned with essentially omnipotent beings and not the accidental omnipotent beings. There are many fictional and mythical characters who are attributed to these characteristics of omnipotence. For example, Thanos, or Presence, or Bruce Almighty, or God. You know what I'm talking about. We will call those beings as omnipotent beings and march forward. Now all these beings and characteristics are fascinating and intriguing. But since we are brainstorming here, whether it is logically possible for such a being to exist, let me pose a question to you. What do you think? Is it possible for an omnipotent being to create a stone which is so heavy that he himself cannot lift? And that's the omnipotent paradox. Can an omnipotent being create a stone which is so heavy that he himself cannot lift? Either way, you answer yes or no. The omnipotent being fails to qualify as the omnipotent being. Now suppose an omnipotent being creates a stone which is too heavy for him to lift. Then if he creates the stone, then he is incapable of lifting it. Therefore he is not all-powerful after all. Now suppose if he is able to lift anything and everything, he is all-powerful, he can lift anything. Then, my friends, he is not capable of creating such a stone. In either way, he fails to qualify as an omnipotent being. When you start thinking this way, you get interesting versions of the paradox. For example, for instance, can an omnipotent being create a square circle? Or can an omnipotent being create a triangle whose sides don't match to 180 degrees? Or can an omnipotent being, this one is very interesting, can an omnipotent being create a prison which is so secure that he himself cannot escape from it? The common argument against omnipotent paradox is that an omnipotent being does not go against logic, or omnipotent being cannot act beyond logic. It means that the being can act only according to his nature. For instance, an omnipotent being cannot create another being who is even more powerful, because by definition he is the most powerful being in the universe. This means that the omnipotent being, is incapable of creating another omnipotent being. Which also means that if suppose he even creates another such a being who is even more powerful, then he becomes the omnipotent being and the original omnipotent being is dethroned, therefore not being the omnipotent being in the universe. Thus, even if the omnipotent being follows his own nature and goes according with it, he is limited and therefore he might be omnipotent, but in his own narrowed down sense. Another interesting argument people make is that an omnipotent being can create a stone and then lose his omnipotence and therefore struggling to lift it. It is like an omnipotent being loses his omnipotence for a while. Now this is an interesting argument and quite a valid argument at that, but this argument does not deal with the essential omnipotent being. Now in this video we are chiefly concerned with the essential omnipotent being and not the accidental omnipotent being. If we are considering that an omnipotent being is all powerful at all times, this argument fails and the paradox stands. Another interesting argument people pose is that an omnipotent being is omnipotent, which means he has all the strength, has all the powers, but he is not all able. For example, an omnipotent being can have unlimited, infinite amount of strength, but that doesn't mean he has all the abilities to do anything. Strength is not equal to ability. This is what these people argue. When you ask somebody, can you create something which you cannot do? You're essentially asking him something which is logically impossible. But as we have seen in the Cambridge Dictionary or Oxford Learner's Dictionary, that an omnipotent being is not only all powerful, but he is able to do anything. Thus, if we take into consideration the Oxford Learner's Dictionary and Cambridge Dictionary, an omnipotent being has to be able to do anything and everything with all the powers. Hence, if you consider the ability to do anything in the equation, the paradox stands and the argument fails, unfortunately. There was another interesting argument which I read on Wikipedia. Let me read it here. Essentially, the question is asking if the being is incapable. So the real question would be, is an omnipotent being capable of being incapable? If the omnipotent being is capable of being incapable, it means that he is incapable because he has the potential not to be able to do something. Conversely, if the omnipotent being is incapable of incapable, then the two negatives cancel out and then he is capable. Therefore, even in this argument, the being is accidentally omnipotent and not essentially omnipotent. And they are considering the essential omnipotence, the omnipotence where a being is all powerful at all times and it is not limited by any sense. The being who is all powerful and is able to do anything and everything, ability plus strength. Lastly, let's think of an omnipotent being who is not bound to the laws of logic or science or physics or anything. This kind of omnipotent being is able to do anything and everything beyond logic. Till now we have seen only logic. Now this kind of being can go beyond logic. Now this gives the being a tremendous amount of power, like an unimaginable amount of power. This kind of being can create a square circle or a triangle whose angles don't match to 180 degrees. Or he can even create a married bachelor, or creating a prison which is so secure from which he cannot escape and can escape. Such kind of being can exist and non-exist at the same time. Now this attribute is so intense and so mind-boggling, like most of the religions assign such attributes to their respective gods. If such kind of omnipotent being is not subjected to any kind of laws of logic, then neither is the information he communicates to us. We don't have to trust the information he communicates to us because it is not subjected to the laws of logic. Maybe what such a being says is accurate. Maybe what such a being says is not accurate. Whether you believe in him or you don't believe in him, it doesn't matter at all. If this is the kind of definition you are considering for an omnipotent being who is not subjected to the laws of logic. If it is not subjected to the laws of logic, there is no point in believing what such a being says. At the end of the day, I think most of the arguments against the paradox fail, and that an omnipotent being cannot logically exist. If you have an interesting argument, you can share it with us. Thoughts like this give us keen insight on what some words mean, on what language means, or how we can apply logic to the intangible concepts or imaginary concepts, on what it means to have a better clarity of thought. It makes us question what we usually take for granted. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy the videos on this channel as well.